Right, to all of you viewers of Equinoxe Television, is the news hour. Thank you so much for joining us. Our major stories tonight. Several authorities continue visiting the Oliga village in Bankolo, where at least 30 persons lost their lives in a mudslide over the weekend. The Minister for Communication, Rene Emmanuel Sadi, comforted the grieving families during a visit today he paid to the disaster site. And also the president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement political party, Professor Maurice Kamto, was also in Bankolo to give moral support to those who lost loved ones in that unfortunate tragedy. In this newscast, we will be taking you to Bankolo one day after that unfortunate incident. And do you know that taking care of your mental health is just as important, and why not more important, than your physical health? As Cameroon joins other countries today to observe the World Mental Health Day today, medics advise people to stay away from stress and stresses as much as they can. Details in just a moment. Welcome back, viewers. Thank you for always being with us for the news in the English language. And now, one day after the unfortunate incident which happened in Bankolo, rescuers there are still hoping that they might save some people who may still be trapped under the rubble. And those survivors are saying that they are in need desperately of assistance. And we told you that the Minister for Communication, Rene Emmanuel Sadi, and also Professor Maurice Kamto of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement comforted some aggrieved families there in Bankolo today. Let's now have the updates with Immaculate Fogwe.
Rescuers still struggling to pull out bodies and reach out to survivors of the deadly Bankolo landslide in the nation's political capital city, Yaoundé. The floods caused by days of torrential rains has transformed the entire neighborhood into ruins. The man-made lake that was surrounded by an embankment is now dry after emptying its entire water content on the population. Extreme pain grips the hearts of survivors who watched helplessly their loved ones carried away. It is really painful to lose a brother, mother and sister. I pray God gives them strength to overcome the pain they are going through. About 10 people have drowned at this same lake, but what happened on Sunday is disastrous. Visiting the site, government spokesman and Minister of Communication Rene Emmanuel Sadi extends the heartfelt condolences of the head of state. He says President Paul Biya has ordered that an operation command post be set up on the site of the incident, while promising to provide aid to the disaster victims. Another prominent figure who visited the site is the president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement political party, Professor Maurice Kamto. He called on the government to urgently mobilize financial resources to support the disaster victims. Consoling the victims, His Grace Jean Baga, Archbishop of the Yaoundé Diocese, calls on them not to give up during such hard times.
We decide to come and give compassion to these people, to tell them that we are together in this situation and we are working to be more engaged to help them spiritually, in humanity, in the sociality.
It is estimated that over 25 houses were swept away by the floods, with the death toll rising to over 30. Life may never be the same in Bankolo after this deadly incident.
Well, we continue extending our heartfelt condolences to the bereaved families and courage to all the survivors. And now we talk about high cost of living in Cameroon. Traders and consumers in the city of Douala fear before the end of this year, 2023, inflation might happen by 6.6%. This is because of the continuous increase in the prices of goods of basic necessities, especially food items in the market. Our reporter Mala Glory spoke with some buyers and also consumers at the Bepanda market here in Douala, who say they find it really difficult feeding their families with their very little means. We come back to this report by Mala Glory. We are talking about the high cost of living in Cameroon. She was at the Bepanda market here in the city of Douala, where some traders and consumers she spoke with say they fear before the end of this year there might be an inflation of 6.6%. This is because of the continuous increase in the prices of goods of basic necessities, especially food items at marketplaces. She was at the Bepanda market, like I said. She spoke with some people who say they find it really hard to feed their families with the little means they have at hand.
The city of Douala, just like elsewhere in Cameroon, that are poorly constructed, are often exposed to natural catastrophe. The recent incident at Mobikines, which cost the lives of more than 34 people, is a situation that has called the attention of technical industrial experts who say victims of collapsed building are ignorant of builders' risk insurance, and thus warn the population on the importance of a construction insurance.
Cette réparation ne peut pas se faire sans les experts techniques, puisque l'obligation.
The reparation cannot be done without the technical part. This is because the law obliges that the modalities of reparation should be done by an expert. Some technicians are even paid less than what they deserve.
Il faut surtout pas envoyer un expert mal payé sur le terrain.
Members of the sector gathered in Douala for their third session this Monday after more than 27 people were reported dead in a mudslide in Yaoundé, to remind the population that a technical industrial expert will be able to advise its clients from constructing in risk zones.
Il dit tout simplement qu'il faudrait que les uns.
Let each and everyone get suitable advice before constructing in a particular area. It's sad. I take this opportunity to extend my condolences to families who lost their loved ones.
Aujourd'hui, mais je pense qu'on peut les éviter.
The experts go further to explain that risks increase because of administrative tolerance, thus believe that working in close collaboration with the government authorities would help limit this catastrophe.
We sincerely apologize for that mix-up there. And now we talk health. Recent statistics from health officials in the country indicate that 1 out of 3 persons are suffering from a psychopathy. The health condition is as a result of several factors like insecurity, violence, stress, among others. And most of the times, patients with mental disorders are being stigmatized as the world observed the World Mental Health Day today. Our reporter Lucy Liengu ACS spoke with a psychiatrist and put together this report for the news.
In recent years, mental health disorder has been a major health problem in Cameroon. According to Dr. Guy Michael Togem, a psychiatrist, 1 out of 3 people suffer from a mental health illness.
In the lifetime, 1 out of 3 people in Cameroon will have a mental illness. So I think with that one we can easily understand that that's a major health issue in Cameroon.
Most cases of mental health disorder begin from the age of 14, which most of the times go unnoticed.
For example, depression represents around, among youth, we shall say 6% of the population, between 15 and 22, around 22 years old, and most of them usually start just in teenager.
The psychopathy can be caused by several factors, including depression, insecurity, violence, isolation, stress, amongst others.
Basically, the cause of mental issues are 3 things. The first one is genetics. So there are some genes that makes you more vulnerable to some mental illnesses. The second thing is the life events, because if I go through hard time, I'm more likely to feel depressed and thereby to have a depression. And also the last thing is our personal resources, the way we cope with life issues.
In Cameroon, like in the world, most people who are mentally ill are being stigmatized.
And if you're helping, the easiest way is just to approach the person and ask him what's going on. That one works, it's okay, but usually a good deadline is 2 weeks. So if after 2 weeks the person is not yet fine, then it's good time to seek for the help of a professional.
Dr. Guy Michael Togem called on families or friends with mentally ill patients to help them better their condition rather than segregating them from the society. Celebrated on the 10th of October, the World Mental Health Day is devoted for the promotion of mental well-being across the world. The theme for this year is Mental Health is a Universal Human Right.
And now let's talk about the award of medals to some 44 Cameroons after they excellently managed the AFCON and COVID-19 crisis that was in 2019. Between 2019 and 2022, they were awarded by the Secretary General at the Presidency of the Republic, Ferdinand Ngongo. But our reporter, Babila Jonathan, tells us in the report which comes up next that civil society actors seem not to be very okay with those awards.
The 44 persons awarded medals of valor and merit by Cameroon's head of state Paul Biya were entrusted with 3 major assignments of national interest.
The head of state has to decide to give this task to some people who executed so well that we were able to organize the Women Cup 2016. And it was a very big success. The African Nation Cup that was well organized. The COVID that was well managed in Cameroon. And many people appreciate even at the level of international. And today, if all these people achieve the goal the head of state wanted them to achieve, can only deserve the award of medals.
While handing over the medals, the Secretary General at the Presidency of the Republic, Ferdinand Ngongo, praised the recipients for successfully organizing the Africa Cup of Nations, AFCON, in the female and male categories, and for the proper management of the COVID-19 pandemic in Cameroon. On the controversies about the alleged corruption scandals surrounding the Africa Cup of Nations and the fight against COVID-19, Full Godfred says the award did not legitimize corruption in any way.
Giving the award will not stop if in the course of their management there were certain lapses to being investigated by the judicial system.
He says the alleged corruption scandals do not dampen the fruit of the labor of the recipients.
And now we take you out of our national frontiers, viewers. Liberians today vote in the presidential and legislative elections. Outgoing President George Weah is the favorite for this election as head of Liberia against 19 other candidates competing in the first round of the elections. And in Niger, Algeria has suspended her mediation with Niger. A roundup of our fan page with Cedric Chakutio.
In Niger, Algeria has announced it has suspended its efforts to mediate the political crisis in Niger following the coup in July 2023. Its Foreign Affairs Ministry said in a statement on Monday that declarations from the Nigerian authorities had raised legitimate questions about their real willingness to follow through on their acceptance of Algerian mediation. Moreover, it has now put the process on hold pending a commitment from junta to continue with mediation. It should be recalled that Niger accepted Algeria's offer to mediate in its political crisis aimed to returning the country to constitutional rule. And over to Liberia, Liberians vote on Tuesday in the presidential and legislative elections. Outgoing President George Weah is the favorite for his re-election as head of Liberia against 19 candidates competing in the first round. His main challenger is former Vice President Joseph Boakai, who ran his campaign under the slogan Rescue. He's arguing that the West African state deteriorated during the first 6 years of Weah's term. Moreover, more than 2.4 million voters are called to the polls in this English-speaking country in West Africa.
And now we talk sports. The president of the Cameroon Football Federation says his balance sheet for the past 19 months is really positive. Samuel Etofis was speaking as he opened an extraordinary General Assembly meeting that saw the presence of 56 out of the 69 members. The extraordinary General Assembly meeting is taking place at the CAF Excellence Center in Bankomo, Yaoundé. Smart Jikan Gabriel is our sportsman.
Members of the Executive Committee and delegates of the Cameroon Football Federation FECAFOOT began the extraordinary General Assembly meeting of the FA with a minute of silence in memory of those who died at the Mbankomo landslide in Yaoundé. In his opening address, Cameroon's FA President Samuel Eto'o says for the past 19 months there have been a positive balance sheet. Before we arrived at the FA, everything was in agony as we had empty stadia, salaries weren't paid, a great majority of sponsors had turned their backs on the FA. Football in the country was all about court cases, but 19 months later, the global balance sheet is positive. The extraordinary General Assembly meeting that took place at the CAF Excellence Center in Bankomo had an 18-point agenda with the suspension of 3 GA members, Owonagapa Alexandre, Nseke Adolphe, and Kome Max Jerome, to be looked into by the Executive Committee members and the delegates. Issues related to the modification of the Electoral Code and statutes of FECAFOOT were also on the day's agenda. Samuel Eto'o has instructed team coaches to do everything possible to get a balanced team. To all of the coaches, sometimes I ask myself questions. My dear colleagues and employees, Cameroon has 10 regions. What explains that the best under-17 team has no representatives from other regions? Mr. Technical Director, henceforth, before a list is published, it should be brought to me for verifications. What surprised many during the extraordinary General Assembly was the mufflers worn by everyone, which had inscriptions on them saying "Soutien total" at Samuel Eto'o.
And so that does it for the first part of the news. Don't go away, viewers. Talking Points comes up next. Stay with us. Welcome back, viewers. Our guest tonight is Sama Abang. He is a civil society actor. Mr. Sama, thank you so much for accepting to be our guest on Talking Points tonight. You are in Boya, and now I want to find out from you, how did you people in Boya receive what happened in Bankolo that was over the weekend? We know that a similar incident took place in Boya some months back, where water from the mountain actually swept away houses and even killed some persons. Something similar also happened in Limbe recently. So how did you guys receive the unfortunate news from Yaoundé?
The events, the sad and unexpected events in Boya, where we had floods and mudslides, and the Bankolo incident in Yaoundé 2 days back, just add to the ever-increasing numbers of preventable natural disasters that we have experienced in the country of late. I would want to remind you about the case of Ngwasher in Bafoussam. I'm sure it was in 2019 or 2020, thereabouts. I would also want to remind you of the events in Limbe this year and last year. I also want to remind you of the events recently in Douala, where we had heavy downpours that resulted in the collapse of buildings. And so these two that you just named simply add to the ever-increasing numbers of such catastrophes. As to my appreciation, I would want to appreciate by asking you back the question, are these catastrophes preventable? Were they preventable? Were they foreseeable? I think so. Just that we have not been able to plan adequately. And as the Englishman says, when you fail to plan, you are rather planning to fail.
And now, Mr. Sama, in Bankolo, we saw the Minister for Territorial Administration at the site. He was trying to mobilize the victims for mattresses and other items to be handed over to them. He was insisting that it was from the presence of the Republic to those affected by the mudslide in Bankolo. What's your appreciation again of that move from the Minister for Territorial Administration and Decentralization, Paula Tanganji?
we saw the same Minister of Territorial Administration on the heels of the catastrophe in Boya, sharing packets of spaghetti and tins of sardine and vegetable oil to victims who had lost complete buildings and materials. We saw the same minister on the heels of the COVID-19 worldwide disaster as his own palliative. I don't know whether it was from him or the head of state, but since it is typical of him to always attribute everything to the head of state, we saw him go around the country nationwide distributing what the Frenchman calls les seaux maçons. That is these black chantier buckets that are used at construction sites. We saw him even on the heels of his visits to IDP victims in the Northwest and Southwest, traditionally sharing to them mattresses and the same buckets. So it's for me to say whether it is an appropriate palliative for people who have lost loved ones, people who have lost their life savings in the form of infrastructure. We are talking about people who were living in risk zones, which definitely indicates to you that these are the poorest of the poor in the society. And you think that the best you can do for them is give them mattresses to sleep in the open air, give them mattresses to sleep in the open air in Yaoundé at a time when there is still heavy downpour.
But Mr. Sama, we also say in English that half bread is better than none. Rather than leave the suffering people to sleep on bare floor outside, it's better to give them mattresses, and why not buckets, mattresses, to at least they can get somewhere, a neighbor's place, and lie on. Why not? According to you, what were you expecting from the government or from the local administration?
I would have expected the minister who has lodged in his ministry a directorate of civil protection to have mobilized funds and resources to first and foremost relocate those persons, get them into makeshift infrastructure where they can have roofs over their heads before you start thinking of mattresses. I would have expected the government to do a census of all of those persons directly affected and see how government could resettle them. Well, we are talking of a government that is somewhere. Somewhere, as the Frenchman will say, is a government that is deaf, but not completely dumb. It is deaf to advice from from any other, and only speaks its own language. And so I wouldn't have expected much from them, given their historical antecedents of how they have handled similar catastrophes in the past.
You seem to have the same view with some civil society actors who think that the visit of government authorities was just like a show or drama. But there is another school of thought who think that their comfort was very necessary. Don't you think so? Their moral support.
My view is not very different. It's not at all different from that. But again, I think that Cameroonians by now should have gotten used to the modus operandi of those who govern them. You would only see them come out and with one language, we shall carry out a census. The head of state has sent us to comfort you, and the head of state is aware of your misfortunes. But again, what actions do you see them concretely take? I think one of the problems we have in this country with our governance system, which I often term governance by rascality, is the notion of administrative tolerance. Even at a time when we find these landslides and other preventable natural catastrophes happening by the day, we still see administrators complicitly complacent, or may I say complacently complicit with the abuses of the population. As much as we blame the government, as long as we blame the authorities in place for not doing much enough, we also blame the population for not respecting basic rules. But when the population does not respect the rules, what is the role of the government? We have hardly seen situations where people who construct on risk sites where demolitions have effectively taken place. We only wait when such catastrophes happen, and then you will find some makeshift demolitions, and after that, people go back. We had landslides in Limbe recently, and till date, we still see people constructing along from mile 2, from mile 1 up to, from mile 3 right down to half mile. You still see people constructing on very risky hillsides and slopes, and nobody does anything. By the time such a catastrophe visits a town like Limbe, that's when you see authorities who spend taxpayers' money running to the site to preach the same gospel, and after that, it is business as usual.
Mr. Abang, we are not going to stop seeking for solutions, because all we want is for such incidents to stop. Let them stop reoccurring in other localities in Cameroon, taking away the lives of so many Cameroonians. So according to you, before we take leave of you, Mr. Abang, what concrete moves should the government take to reduce the reoccurrence of such incidents, mudslides or landslides in Cameroon?
We expect administration to be firm on issues that have to touch on the lives of the citizens. But again, I understand that government too cannot be firm because it is guilty of impoverishing the population. Because a majority of those, or almost all of those who take the risk to put the lives of their families and themselves in harm's way by constructing on such risk sites are amongst those I call the most vulnerable of the society, who for one reason or the other, or who for the obvious reasons cannot raise the means to be able to get decent habitation in a decent and risk-free zone. The only thing they have to do, since everybody must survive, is to get whatever is available, even at the risk of peril of their own lives and property. That is where that's what we expect the state to be active in either stopping, preventing, mapping out those risk zones and enforcing the laws in place, making sure that people do not construct there. And the best the state can do, again, to alleviate such circumstances is to improve on the conditions of life of the citizens.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sama Abang, for your contribution on the news. Viewers, thank you so much for always being there. Our programs continue. The news in the French language is at 8 p.m. Equinoxe Soir in about 30 minutes. Stay with us on Equinoxe Television. Bye-bye for now.